Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Jeffersonian Democracy Part 3, otherwise known as Foreign Policy, Louisiana Purchase, and the War of 1812. If only I could move my face from the bottom right-hand corner. I'm sure there's some way that can happen. But we're not going to worry about this. This is live screencasting, folks. It's recorded, but it's like it happened live. So, let's talk about our early foreign policy. Jefferson, in particular, distrusted large standing armies, unlike the Federalists and some other European countries we know. So instead, he focused on creating something that will be catchy forevermore. The problem, of course, if you don't have a large standing army, is it takes a time to get a force together if anything bad happens. Like pirates on the Barbary Coast. Pirates on the Barbary Coast? And no, we don't mean San Francisco. We mean the little territory in between. I'm pointing something you can't see. The little territory in between Spain and Morocco. They are holding American ships ransom for $60,000. Thomas Jefferson sends the U.S. Marines to Tripoli, hence the U.S. Marine Corps song "From the Shores of Tripoli." And to rescue them and to free them. That was super exciting. Everyone was very jazzed about that. We will not negotiate with terrorists. He also developed a navy of 200 small boats known as the Jeffs. It was or the Mosquito Fleet with one mounted gun. And he was worried about a strong military buildup that would lead the U.S. into foreign conflicts. I don't know what he. Oh, hey, that maybe makes some sense. Let's talk about the Louisiana Purchase for just a second, can we? I know you've heard about it. I know everyone knows a big deal about it, but it really goes against Thomas Jefferson's character. Main problem, of course, though, is Thomas Jefferson knows that whoever controls New Orleans and the port of New Orleans really controls the future of the United States, because New Orleans is the point of departure for any goods that are grown essentially in the American West. And at this point, we're meaning like Louisiana, Arkansas, not quite into Missouri yet, but Ohio and Indiana and Illinois, because we're taking all of our goods and services, cotton, wheat, etc., down the Mississippi River. So Thomas Jefferson is interested in getting access to the port of New Orleans. He offers $10 million for New Orleans to Napoleon. And he knew that if this would fail, he might have to ally with Great Britain for protection. And nothing bothers Thomas Jefferson more than allying with Great Britain for protection. Napoleon is having a bad day. He decides to sell all of Louisiana territory for $15 million. Why did he do that? Well, he was having trouble with the slave revolt in Santo Domingo led by Toussaint Louverture, Haitian Revolution, no longer need Louisiana because they're done with it. He says, forget it. I'm over it. I need money because I'm fighting Great Britain. I'm feared, what if I lose? If I lose to Great Britain, then Louisiana will become theirs. That's bad. So if I sell it to the United States, I'll have an ally with the U.S., and that's going to thwart British power in North America. So what's the big deal? What's the controversy? Jefferson conflicted. It doesn't say anything in the Constitution about land purchases by a president. She doesn't say it. They weren't thinking about it. And we know Jefferson is a strict constructionist, right? He's a limited government kind of guy. Many people might have seen this as a land grab. However, this could solidify the democratic experiment because it could avoid war with France, and we could create an alliance with Great Britain. We will keep our independence and sovereignty. It'll remove the last vestige of old Europe from North America. And they were a little afraid that Napoleon would change his mind. So Jefferson says, all right, you know what? This land is going to be great for the people I like. Yeoman farmers, we're going to increase the land. They'll be able to get more land. It will decrease some of the impact of manufacturing in the Eastern financial elites and open up the area to new states. So I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it. So he submits the treaty to Senate knowing the purchase was unconstitutional. And Congress and his supporters were like, this is unconstitutional, but hey, okay, we'll do what you say. There it is, in green, Louisiana Purchase. And it's important to remember, folks, the Louisiana Purchase does not give the United States land from sea to shining sea, proverbially. It gives everybody the vast swath of the middle of the country, like Nebraska and Montana-ish and part of Dakota. And so Jefferson is very excited. He sends Lewis and Clark out in 1804 to go explore what they had purchased. They are aided, of course, by this famous Sacagawea, who is on the dollar coin. It's a 2.5-year trek from St. Louis through the Rockies to the Oregon Territory. They make it to the mouth of the Columbia River. They have to decide what to do. Do they turn around and wait, or do they go back? Do they wait for the winter there? They actually have a democratic election. Not election, a vote. I apologize. They have a vote about whether to stay or whether to go back. It includes African Americans and Native women, probably the first democratic election, participatory election in United States history. And they came back. It was super exciting. Everyone loved it. Lewis and Clark, like, America is on our way now. You can't match us. Check it out. They made it. It was a big deal. And that is Louisiana Purchase and Lewis and Clark. However, ladies and gentlemen, very quickly, no good deed goes unpunished. There are still troubles in the Atlantic. Napoleon declares war on Great Britain in 1803. Napoleon and Great Britain are mad at each other. The U.S. can't trade with either one without facing recriminations or repercussions from the other. The U.S. just wants to sell stuff to people and make money. They don't want to get involved in the war. Then, of course, we have this issue of Great Britain and also France, but primarily Great Britain, just stopping American ships whenever they feel like it and taking the sailors because they said they were deserting British sailors, which they probably were. But still, you can't just do that to us, right? And so they would impress U.S. sailors, 6,000 U.S. sailors stolen from 1808 to 1811. And this particular incident was quite unsettling. The U.S. captain refused. The Chesapeake was fired on. People were killed. Great Britain eventually said sorry, but the U.S. public was outraged. They demanded that Thomas Jefferson declare war, but the U.S. resisted at that point. Instead, Jefferson said, I know. I'll show Great Britain and France how important we are by putting an embargo on all trade with either of them. He saw this as peaceable coercion, but it completely backfired for several reasons. Great Britain and France basically kind of just went, huh? Oh, I'm sorry. Did we need you for something? And then the Federalists in New England, the people who were the merchants and the manufacturers, were really mad because New England shipping was mad. Southern farmers are mad because Great Britain and France are trading with them, and they have no goods for to give their rice, tobacco, and now cotton to Great Britain. And so in one fell swoop, managed to irritate all sections of the country, even his supporters, created a major black market in smuggling, revived the almost dead Federalist Party, and since there was no competition with Great Britain's industrialization, actually helped New England industrialize, something that Thomas Jefferson always opposed. The embargo was repealed, but it was replaced by the Non-Intercourse Act, fill in your joke here, which said we will trade with everyone except Great Britain and France. If we actually had trade relationships with other countries, that might have mattered, but they were our major trading partners. Which leads us now to James Madison and the War of 1812. Let's move on. First, we have people who are elected to Congress in 1810, known as war hawks, strong nationalists who really want the United States to go to war against European powers and in the West by the Mississippi River to compel British Canada and the native tribes there to stop messing with the United States. These congressmen, you may note, are from the South and the West in particular. Henry Clay, John C. Calhoun, and others who will be in the Congress and the Senate for years and years to come. They are angered at British impressment of U.S. sailors. They're furious over British Canada supplying weapons to frontier natives. And this gives us a good opportunity to talk about a burgeoning pan-native alliance created by Tecumseh and the Prophet, who were two Shawnee brothers who tried to create an eastern Mississippi confederacy to stem the westward advance of settlers. They rejected Western ways. They rejected Western civilization and trappings. They attracted many people to their cause. And they were creating a town of pan-Indian sort of independence. That's what we call Prophetstown. There was a band that was led by the Prophet. They unfortunately was defeated and killed by the Indiana governor, William Henry Harrison, and his army at Tippecanoe during the War of 1812, which gets to his nickname Tippecanoe and Tyler too. Get there later. Tecumseh allied with the British, but he also died at the Battle of Thames in 1813, and the Pan-Indian Alliance was unfortunately no more. So we got ahead of ourselves a little bit. Once we decide to invade war, Invade war? Did I just say invade war? This is live, folks. You can't go back. Once they decided to declare war, our first thought, as always, until about 1860, is let's invade Canada. We would have been victorious if we had concentrated in one large city like Montreal, but instead we launched a three-pronged attack on Detroit, Niagara, and Lake Champlain. All of them were failures. We tried again in 1813, but that failed too. The only thing we did have success on was on the sea, and by the sea we mean the Great Lakes, because they're large. The USS Constitution, Old Ironsides, Commodore Oliver Hazard Perry defeats Great Britain on the Great Lakes and allows for Harrison's troops to overtake the British at the Battle of Thames, and we already know that is also the battle that ended the Indian Confederacy when Tecumseh. There's a map. Pause me if you want to take a look at the map. By the way, shout out for something called Fort Michilimackinac. If you've ever been to Mackinac or Mackinac Island in Michigan, it's pretty fun. Meanwhile, how else was the war going? Well, the Brits attacked New York through Lake Champlain. We do pull off a crucial 11th hour victory and keep the British from invading New York, which is good. But the Brits attack Washington, D.C. They burn the Capitol and the White House. Remember, we already talked about the dinner that was left on the White House to be eaten. And they launched an attack on Fort Henry in Baltimore, but are also repulsed. And as we know, of course, that leads to the story of the Star-Spangled Banner, which I told you in your U.S. history overview. I believe those lectures are also online. Go check that out. So what's the significance of the war? Don't forget, our biggest victory comes down there at the bottom of our bullet point. Ironically, 2 weeks after the declaration to end the war is signed, Andrew Jackson defeats the Brits in New Orleans, kills about 2,000 in half an hour, only 70 U.S. casualties. We're pretty excited about it, even though it happened after the treaty was already signed. Speaking of that treaty, it's the Treaty of Ghent. It was signed on Christmas Eve. And essentially what it was to say, let's pretend this war never existed. It's an armistice. All conquered territory is restored to the original owner. The original grievances, particularly left over from the Revolutionary War and impressment, were not mentioned. They just sort of said, let's not worry about it. And everyone went back to the way things were. And in New England, meanwhile, New England was going, hey, this war is really unpopular. The Federalists we got an opportunity. We have a Hartford Convention where we're going to vote to secede unless the Thomas Jefferson and the Jeffersonian Republicans agree to all of our really strict constructionist demands, which is weird because we're loose constructionists in the Constitution, except when the other party is in power. They send men to D.C. to complain. Just as they do that, victorious news from New Orleans and the Treaty of Ghent arrive, makes the Federalists look bad. The death of the Federalist Party ensues, and they never run a candidate again. So what's the overall legacy? It was a small compared to the European wars of Napoleon, but for us, it was a major deal. Second war for American independence. We stood up for our rights as a sovereign nation. We have new respect for our fighting capability. The Navy made a name for itself, and now the U.S. will be taken more seriously diplomatically as a result, because remember, naval power is super important at this time. It created some war heroes like Andrew Jackson and William Henry Harrison. It destroyed the Federalist Party, which decreased sectionalism somewhat. Natives were forced to relinquish large tracts of land again. Manufacturing prospered due to the Great Britain blockade and previous embargo, so now we're less dependent on Europe for goods, and there's a huge surge in U.S. nationalism. We did not fight as sort of one nation, but as one, right? We are not just now people from Virginia or people from Delaware. Where's Delaware? Oh, from Delaware. Now we are fighting as Americans. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our foreign policy and the War of 1812. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you later for the era of good feelings.